I played Henry V in 1984 at Stratford in a production by Adrian Noble.
Do you remember the first night? Do you still remember the first preview?
I remember the first preview because we hadn't been able to complete the dress rehearsal, and so I was of a nervous disposition, and I did indeed transpose a number of lines during the course of the piece, which didn't entirely make sense of the play, but we did get to the end of it. But I remember it as a sort of both in the experience and in the feeling about what the play was producing in the audience, that it was an epic experience and a very emotional one.
I played it 10 years ago, 2015 to 16, in Stratford in the New Theatre, and then at the Barbican, and in Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, and at BAM at the Brooklyn Academy of Music in New York. But crucially, we did it with Richard II, which I wasn't in because Hal's not in Richard II, Henry IV, 1 and 2, and then Henry V. I mean, it's so huge and so deep and so complicated, especially doing the 3 plays. I would discover things sometimes in the first scene that I was in Henry IV and sort of keep exploring them until the final scene in Henry V. And it was just an amazing and profound sort of pleasure, yeah. And I found it incredibly emotional too, yeah. Really, I was surprised, I think, by how emotional I found it. I think what he has to attempt to experience and negotiate within himself and, you know, outside of himself is so compromising and so complicated. For me, the version of it that we did, it was totally crucially that boy attempting through the course of the play to become more fully realised and a man and a king, which I would have no concept of how I would approach the role if that hadn't have been the way that we'd been doing it. I think it could come out very differently, I'd imagine, if you're not using that context in the same way.
Which Alfie is about to find out.
Goodness. So actually that makes me want to
We're not doing Henry IV's. Sorry.
I wanted to ask Ken then, what do you think made it emotional? Alex was talking a bit about that journey and that arc.
One thing that I felt started that emotional impact was guilt. Guilt in the character for how his own father achieved the crown. Guilt that we come into a play where Henry V, who very soon in the play, very powerfully, in a favourite scene of mine anyway, where he I don't know if this is in your version, but that where he unmasks the conspirators.
Yeah.
Yes.
So early.
But that's from a man who just a short while ago and a short play ago said, I know thee not, old man, to a gentleman amongst many, some of whom were in this very play, who were his best friends, with whom he has sort of assumed a mask that he now drops, and now he has both the guilt of that, you might say, if you think that he feels it, and you might say, if you think he feels it, the isolation. So I felt both of those things. I don't know how you felt when you played it, but there's an intensity, it seems possible anyway, in that scene with the conspirators, where the idea that your best friend betrayed you, the one person whom in this new, utterly pressurized position, requiring all the support you can get, does that. Has Henry react with a ferocity, this whatever it is of thine is like another fall of man. When you were asked to do it, what was your initial reaction?
I love this play. I think it's the first Shakespeare play I ever saw. And actually the first thing from any of Shakespeare's plays that I ever performed was the Crispin Day speech. So it sort of lived with me on a kind of very personal, emotional level for a long time. And I think there was something for me about just the gig later. It feels like something that has loomed for me for a long time. But more directly, I think it's such an extraordinary play. On the one hand, it does have the rhetoric and the grandiosity and the pomp and this presentation of honor and sort of rhetorical brilliance that galvanizes the troops in this impossible situation. And it has its opposite. To me, it's the night before the battle, and it's Williams when he says, I'm afraid there are few die well, who die in a battle. And the king himself will have a heavy reckoning to make. It's the fact that it does both of those things so fully without one, it seems to me all the times I've seen it and read it, without one entirely compromising the other. One doesn't negate the other. Those things are in dialogue that I find really thrilling. I find really, really thrilling about it.
What do you think made it emotional for you?
Well, I was thinking about what you were saying then about sort of code switching, sort of the performative element of it. I felt like a 12-year-old, or sort of until the very end of the play. I thought the idea was that emotionally, Henry IV Part 2 should have finished like 2 hours ago. And then we're like, I'm just a kid, I'm a reprobate, and I'm a piece of rubbish. That was the swearing I was going to do. I'm a piece of rubbish, and I am very unsure of my own capabilities and my own worth. My dad has just, before he died, like really torn into my character. And the whole tavern scene in Henry IV Part 1, they're adopting characters. And, you know, the whole sort of first Henry IV Part 1 can be read that he's playing a character that I know you all speech suggests that he says I'm sort of hiding my true nature. I felt it was the other way around. I thought that was sort of, just give me some time and I'll say that. And this is actually what I'm sort of exploring humanity in these plays. And that involves taking on different roles and then taking them off. And so there's a huge part of the Henry V for me that was him. This is me trying on what being someone who's just is like. And this is what standing, at the gates of Harfleur, this is what a really tyrannical, sort of murderous, is it Harfleur? Is that when he says, yeah. That, let me try that on. And I don't know if I mean it. That's what I sort of thought a lot, is I don't know if I mean this or not. I'm going to say it like I mean it and find out if I do, sort of. I found that really interesting. So the emotional part of it was definitely guilt. I think that was a huge part of it. Feeling very isolated and being incredibly unsure whether what he was doing was right, was morally right, whether the crown had been stolen, or was deserved by his father, and whether he had to make up for those sins, whether he would be punished, whether he'd be taking all these people to not only their deaths, but also to hell, potentially, that it's on his shoulders, and he's just a 12-year-old boy. How does he know how to deal with all of that?
When I started, somebody told me a story. He said, "Do you know about the Alan Howard, Henry V?" Wonderful. Alan Howard, one of the great actors in the history of the RSC, who played everything, but amongst brilliant performances, including Hal and Henry V, they went on tour, just like you did, and they said, "Well, what was it like doing this very English play about an English battle and, very anti-French?" And they said, "Well, it's funny, we went to, you'd go to China and the Chinese would identify with the English, and they were just on the side of the underdog. That's the emotional sweep of the play, took you there. Whatever realpolitik is saying about, well, why are you there in the first place, Henry, etc., etc. But basically, when you got to a point where you go, there's just a few of us, and there's a ton of them, but if you could believe that to be here is the greatest moment in your life with us, I think you'll find the energy so everybody got involved with that.
The other thing I was struck by when you were saying about him kind of trying on different things is I've been reading Dan Jones's biography of Henry, which is fascinating. And one of the things he talks about is that Henry was really the first king in history to have had a kind of traineeship, to have from a very young age watched other people, first Richard II and then his father, be king. It was interesting because I'd been thinking of that as kind of, and therefore he's ready for it. But actually when you were talking, I was thinking, if you flip that, therefore, of course, as well, you have all these different examples of how to do it or how not to do it, and how bewildering that might also be. That you're kind of constant, in any given moment, he knew more than any other king before him examples of how other people had dealt with similar things, and therefore kind of, at times might have been hijacked by that.
He does have this ability to somehow, like a kind of release valve, to switch back into Hal the roisterer, or at least the twinkly-eyed fella who will, try out an accent in the night, or have a, try and fool people, just have a capacity for a sort of enjoyment, larkiness, and then somehow he's back into this almost desperation, that where he's maybe at his most nakedly alone, least smooth perhaps, but is a wonderful, wonderful thing to play. And I remember thinking, and I wonder if you felt this, and I wish this for you, when we were talking earlier about the emotional quality that the play delivers way beyond this sort of historical chronicle, there seemed to be a peculiar intimacy between the audience and the character. They really go on because they're the ones on the behind the scenes journey.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I felt the quality of listening in the audience was...
I totally agree. That was always, to say a favourite bit, but a bit that I'm most connected to, yeah. It's so fascinating to have a king decrying the trap of his position, and saying, I wish I could swap this with one of you, like, oh my God. And it's actually sort of so opposite to the, let me lead you all somewhere. It's, I just have no idea, oh my God, this is all on me, this, and can it be all on me? Please don't let that be true. It's such a desperate and open and vulnerable position to be in.
And is Shakespeare going to that place with the tragic heroes, which people often talk about, of just, that is so human and so familiar to people, which is, I can't sleep.
Yeah.
Sleep has been taken away from me, and there's a guy over there who's got, I don't know, a half a farm and a bullock or something, and he's snoring his head off.
Yeah.
And
yes,
that won't be possible for me. And you feel there's a sort of music in that piece. What's the thing you most look forward to at this distance?
It's once more into the breach, isn't it, Alfie? Honestly, he's spending all his time trying to persuade me to cut that speech. And I'm there going,
really hard.
apart from anything else, quite a lot of people are turning up for that speech. Although I think I told you this story. I had a brilliant moment when Ian McKellen said to me, Albert Finney told me how to play that speech.
He told me this.
I was like, how? What? Tell me. He said, you whisper every single word until you get to God for Harry, England and St. George.
Very effective.
So that's not the bit you're most looking forward to, and I'm not going to cut it.
Okay. Well, I'll have to steal Ian's and Albert Finney's method on that one then.
Goodness, I don't know. There are so many. I mean, I teased Tamara by saying things like obscure parts of the play, the part that I love most. But truly, it's so difficult. I mean, there is something about the Crispin Day bit. It's the response from Westmoreland when he said, what does he say? He says, would you and I alone could fight this royal battle? And he said, why, now thou hast unwished 5,000 men, which likes me better than to wish us one. There's something about it that it's just so, I mean, I have bored people by saying, look at that, it worked. And there's something about, it feels lazy to say it, feels like sort of lazy mysticism, but there's a magic in that speech. And there's a magic in the way the scene plays out and the conversation before and where Westmoreland gets to. So I think, but that really is one of those. I mean, the Traitors is truly was one of, we were talking about that the other day, and I said, oh, this is, you can't say the heart, but a heart of this thing. There's so much that it's so hard to cut. it's so hard to cut this because it's so rich.
Did either of you have any kind of pre-show rituals that you'd be prepared to admit to?
I like beforehand, I don't know if you can do it now in the world we live in, but I would roam the stage ahead of time. A bit of mumbling, sometimes I do a little bit, but I think there was a little ritual of going, you know what, at some point tonight, I'm going to have to, without the wrong kind of arrogance, I'm going to have to own this stage. Also, I was living the dream. I'd been up there watching, and so...
And not that long before.
No. But there was something about I loved getting out there, smelling it and sort of it wasn't really a sort of warm up, but it was just a kind of, I think I was like a kid on Christmas morning in terms of going, got to be ready, and just feel like you own this place. You know, king it up.
That is astonishing as well, if you think that it was 6 years from when you were up in the gods
Yes.
to on that stage as Henry. What an incredible thing.
I cannot tell a lie. I cannot tell a lie, and I'm so glad that I, you know, was in a position where the RSC would indeed audition young actors and give people a pop. There's an incredible leap of faith on their part. But so I guess that pre-match ritual was partly making sure I was repaying that. You know.
Alex?
Yeah, similar. I would make sure I saw all of the company because it is quite an isolating character. I would, you know, make sure I said hello to everyone and we would play games. But I would breathe the space. I would go as far back as I could on the stage and sort of like a toreador try and sort of breathe in the whole space and be like, I can fill this, I own this space and that kind of thing.
But what do you do when we're all doing our variations on that and you've, as it were, there's nothing you can do until you see the show start again in a few hours? What do you do?
Tear my hair out. I find it the hardest bit.
Sure.
That bit between dress rehearsal and first preview, because then there's really nothing I can do. And so I find it unbearable because I'm just there going, well, it is what it is, and it will be what it will be. The thing I found fascinating on Pericles, because it was my RSC directing debut, which I'm not sure is something you want to happen when you're the co-artistic director, but that's just how it worked out.
We want it to happen.
But I mean, you don't want it to be your debut necessarily as the co-artistic director. But there is something about this company, however much you try and kind of, you know, shrug it off or be totally confident, there is a weight. There is a weight of history. It's in this room today. It's also an extraordinary and beautiful thing that you can have a conversation with the other people who've played the role. But I woke up at 5 a.m. on the morning of the Pericles press night, and I've never been so terrified. And I think there's something about that line of, you know, that line of people who've come before you, and the sense of being part of a continuum and of a legacy, and just not wanting to screw it up. I think it's really powerful at the RSC in a way that I've not felt it in the same way.
I agree, and I say, and I felt it back then because I knew if I allowed the demons in, I was done for, you know. So welcome the ghosts. Welcome the ghosts. I mean, you could almost you weep when you think of the people who've walked on that stage, been in that space. It just, and I found that ultimately completely and utterly inspiring. I mean, it didn't turn me into a sort of monster, I hope, but it was just amazing. I mean, it's touching to be with the boys today, just to sort of feel the, you know, comrades in arms kind of things from the part, and with yourself going into that in that space. There's something very, I think it's something audiences really respond to. I think a beautiful line and unity. They don't have to be theatre experts to understand that something else is at play when you go and see a Shakespeare play in Stratford at that theatre. There's a connection to, you know, 70 years of profoundly important theatrical work. You go further back to the new world of doing plays in Stratford at that theatre 100 or so years ago. You go back to the crazy Jubilee with Garrick, and then you go further back to, you know, the man who retired there. If let's not get into that. if that gentleman wrote the plays, I understand that many people have questions about that. But for the time being, this is what we know, and the connection to that, whether it's, you know, bundled up with a whole bunch of other sort of cultural projections that we bring, has a frisson that is, it's just really magical.
I'll go and spend time with the Hal statue there, like that. Playing it at the RSC as opposed to anywhere else meant an enormous amount to me, because also the play is about carrying the ghosts of the past and about lineage and about, can I wear the crown? Am I worthy to wear the crown? Can I count myself amongst the people that have worn the crown? And that to try to believe that one was deserving, and to attempt to live up to not only the writing, that's the main thing, but also the sort of legacy meant a great deal. A great deal.
And in this play, with that line, although it applies in a different context, I used to feel it very powerfully that when he says we few, we happy few, we band of brothers, that there's also a way in which that sums up the communal experience of witnessing a story told in company. And that's one of the moments in the play when you feel the audience just have that.
Yeah.
As we were saying earlier, it really does feel extraordinary to be taking on this mantle. And I really appreciate what you said about welcoming the ghosts. That actually there is a beauty to that, and rather than feeling like they're standing in judgment, feeling as though they're standing with us is a really wonderful thing. So thank you for having the conversation.
Can't wait to see it.
Thanks for stepping back into your Henry shoes a bit.
And good luck in yours. It's going to be fantastic. Can't wait to see it.
Thank you both so much.